harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation or forced marriage are well known, most people may not be aware of breast ironing, a practice where young girls have their breasts flattened to deter unwanted male attention. Hello everyone and welcome to Our Voices. I am Semenyi Sheikh Oye and I'm joined by my co-host Oriane Itang Shaka and Anastasie Tudieshe. Well, this might be shocking to some of our viewers like it was to me because I learned about this practice very recently, but apparently this is very common in West African countries, but I can't imagine how painful this can be. I just can't grasp the thought of it, you know?
Right, breast ironing. I mean, it's something that I also didn't know about until about 5 years ago, and I was really shocked and I was really hurt. And then the more and more I think about it, I also think about the countries that don't do breast ironing, but they do mental breast ironing because they shine upon girls who have big breasts. And so you find, and I remember growing up, that a lot of the teenagers, they have their shoulders like this because they've been told that, hey, your breasts are not something that we need to see. So they, subconsciously bent their shoulders.
To be able to cover that.
Yeah, and that's something that we need to advocate for countries that are not doing breast ironing, also to really empower young girls to know that they need to appreciate their bodies. No one is saying be promiscuous and show your breast around, but it's something that it's in those cultures as well.
Well, as for me, I heard of it 15 years ago when I was still living in France, hosting a radio show in Paris, and it was Africa numéro 1, so it was an African radio, a prominent one. So we had lots of comments, and one of our shows would talk about that, and I was so surprised to hear about it, but I just thought it was something, not very important. It was just a little group, and 15 years later to hear that it's still going on, and at the point where women need to organize and advocate against it, I can't believe it.
And we have to note that it's not only going on in Africa, but it also is practiced in some Western countries where within African diaspora community. And there are so many cases reported in countries like the UK. Wow. And this will be something we will be looking at in this show too. The United Nations lists breast ironing as one of the 5 most underreported forms of gender-based violence in the world. While it affects nearly 4 million teenagers worldwide, it's most prevalent in Cameroon, where according to National Health Institute, nationwide research exposed 25% of girls and women had undergone the procedure. Breast ironing is a harmful practice that involves the use of pestle, hot stones, coconut shells, or a hammer to massage, pound, or flatten the growth of girls' breasts during puberty. It's often carried out by girls' female relatives to delay puberty and avoid any male attraction, sexual harassment, or violence. However, breast ironing is a very painful process and can cause serious health issues such as tissue damage, deformation, infection, and other psychological harm. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will discuss why certain communities carry out such harmful practice and its lifelong health consequence for girls.
Well, breast ironing or flattening affect about 3.8 million women in Africa, including some parts of Nigeria. Gibson Emeka has this story and narrated by Salem Solomon.
Patience Williams was only 10 when she was subjected to a practice called breast ironing. Worried that she would attract attention from men, her mother pressed a hot object over her breasts to stall growth.
Actually, it's painful because immediately she's done, I used to feel my body is hot.
A decade later, Williams is calling for an end to the painful practice. Victoria Williams, who had also endured breast ironing, says she regrets putting her daughter through such an ordeal.
They did it for me, it works. But when I give birth to my own, I try it, it didn't work. The remaining 2 girls, I think I didn't do anything to them. But all I'm doing is that I used to draw them close to me, make them my friends. Anything they have, anything is...
While it's hard to determine how many women are impacted by the practice in Nigeria, about 3.8 million women across Africa are affected by breast ironing, according to the Africa Health Organization, an international health agency. Choma Agwobu, a Nigerian gender rights activist, describes the harmful nature of the practice and how it violates basic rights.
Imagine somebody heating up a stone and depressing a part of your body because they don't want that part of your body to grow. Nobody has the right to determine the rate of growth of any other person's body.
Nigeria classifies breast ironing as criminal offense, as it does the practices of female genital mutilation and forced marriage. The country's Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act of 2015 specifically penalizes offenders who commit, quote, harmful traditional practices, end quote, with more than a 4-year jail term or a fine of up to $559 or 500,000 naira or both. However, despite the law's provisions, there is no known record in Nigeria of perpetrators facing punishment. Justice Dokulu, a political leader in Jokwe village, says his community is committed to working with the government to stop breast ironing.
But in some certain places like here, people say do it. For my community leaders are people who listen to governments. But they are doing their best to say that it will come to an end.
The practice can cause not only tissue damage but also trauma. Other side effects include malformation, delay in breast milk production, and infection. Activists like Agwobu and survivors like Williams say legislation isn't enough, and they're trying to raise awareness in communities where breast ironing is still accepted by spreading the word through the media and urging community leaders to condemn the painful practice. For Gibson Emeka in Abuja, Nigeria, Salam Solomon, VOA News.
Well, where it is practiced, breast ironing or flattening is a deeply ingrained cultural practice, making eradication efforts much more difficult. However, there are several organizations that have taken steps to raise awareness, and one of them is Women Relief Services, formerly known as Gender Danger. It's a grassroots women's organization that is fighting to end the practice of breast ironing in Cameroon. The founder of the organization, Yvonne Leina, is here with us to discuss why people practice breast ironing. As a woman who narrowly escaped breast ironing herself, she will tell us how her organization addresses this usually well-kept secret between girls and their mothers. It's a great pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, definitely. So growing up in a culture that accepts such kind of practice, you know, fixing women, how were you able to say no to such a practice at a young age?
What happened to me was shock, and the no was a no out of fear. Because what is that? How can someone be warming a grinding stone? We call it the pepper stone. The pepper stone is used to grind pepper. Pepper is hot.
Yeah.
And then you're putting it on the fire and you're using it to press and massage the breast of a teenager. We all know how painful it is when the breasts are beginning to protrude. The hands don't go there. Talk less of a fire-hot stone.
So it's not something you are prepared for growing up. It's not something you are aware of. It just happens.
It happens all of a sudden. You don't even know. It's a top secret between girls and their grandmothers, their aunts, their nannies, or whoever is doing the practice. The entire community is oblivious. And that's one thing that in my career as a women's rights activist and as a journalist, I've come to realize that the voice is very powerful and that silence is a very potent weapon. If we are going to eradicate gender-based violence, we are going to have to unlock the voices of millions of women because there is tremendous things that we will hear. And so how I managed to escape was the fear, the shock, and my voice was unlocked. And from that day, I became the tender journalist until today. The more I grew in my journalism career, the more I found the need to be an activist because I couldn't do fairness and balance on this topic. There's no way I can be fair. I don't want to hear from both sides. You can't tell me that this pain is perpetrated on a young girl
for her own good.
For her own good. There are no two arguments. There are no two sides to this story. It's wrong.
I agree.
And I always say in my activism, culture is not an excuse for torture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's a very great quote, and I'll keep it and I will use it. You have seen, that's what we've been told, you've seen your cousin go through it as she was a teenager. Can you talk to us about the impact it has had on her and what impact it has on teenagers, physically and I'm guessing psychologically?
So, generally speaking, like you, Anastasia, like she just said, across Africa, across the globe, where bodily autonomy is not celebrated, teenage girls have this tendency of hiding and the breast, the chest, and hiding the backside. Mm-hmm. Because the sexuality of a woman is looked upon as a taboo. And so that alone is something that we're struggling with. And then if at a tender age of 9, 10, 11, when you're beginning to ask yourself, what is this? Am I also becoming like mommy? Mm-hmm. In that innocence, your breast is being attacked. That's how I will use it.
Yes.
That tells you you are not sufficient. It tells you the container that carries your soul has a problem. And so we're fighting for gender equality and asking why it's not happening. We have how many years more to achieve gender equality? When across the globe, the container that carries the body of women is being attacked.
That's true. I
agree. When you do breast ironing, you're telling this girl something is wrong with you.
But let's go straight forward to it's being attacked by women.
Yes.
And that's where we really need to drill into, because they're the ones that are keeping the secret. So if usually the secret is kept between the mom and the daughter, or the auntie and the daughter, the grandma and the daughter, why aren't these women hearing the voices of their little girls who are crying out because it's painful and they're suffering? These can be stopped by women.
Absolutely, it can be stopped by women. But let me just paint you a scenario. When I was doing my breast ironing campaign in Ethiopia, you know, Ethiopia is a diplomatic headquarters of Africa, so there's an amalgamation of many African communities. And when I finished speaking to the women, there was this lady who burst into tears. She was from Sierra Leone. And she told me she was planning to do that to her daughter that Friday. And why did she want to do it? She said she's only 8, and the breasts are beginning to protrude. And her cousin, who is 13, just got pregnant in the same household. It's embarrassing for a teenage girl in an African community to expose herself to premarital sex, talk less of an unwanted pregnancy. That tarnishes the reputation of the family.
But is that the only solution? What about covering up? Wear more covered up clothes.
So the thing is, when you talk about wearing more covered clothes, you know, the moms, the first thing they want to think about is, how are you going to cover up? If you look at the pictures of breast iron, if you look at an 8-year-old, what are you going to wear on her that's really going to cover up? To me, the solution is a complete mindset shift.
Accepting the fact that the breast is not a problem.
And probably also sexual education, because if a young girl is pregnant at 13, maybe there is a discussion instead of breast flattening that should have happened between her mother and herself.
Yes.
What do men think about it? How do they feel about it?
The men are totally oblivious of the existence of the practice. The father would usually not know what is happening in the bedroom or in the kitchen because if the girl, God forbid the girl gets pregnant, that's the mother's fault. You know, when the child is good, it's for the family. When the child is bad, it's the mom's fault. So all this is born out of the intention to protect. But
it's not.
As we're going out and speaking to women in their numbers, we're telling them breast ironing is a problem. It's not a solution.
And you advocate for girls and make them understand that. We are here in the studio with Yvonne Leina, founder of Women Relief Services. We will continue our conversation on the harmful practice of breast ironing and its negative health consequences. We also meet Margaret Nyuydzewira, survivor and anti-breast ironing advocate based in United Kingdom, to tell us what the practice looks like outside Africa and it's where when there are laws against it. We also love to hear from you on social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram and X, and our handle is @VOA Africa. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We will be right back. Stay with us.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, Our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depend on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Welcome back. You are with Our Voices, and we are discussing an underreported form of gender-based violence, that is breast ironing. We are in the studio with Yvonne Leina, founder of Women Relief Services, formerly known as Gender Danger, to discuss how common this practice is in the West. Margaret Nyuydzewira, founder of Came Women and Girls Development Organization in the UK, is also joining us via Skype from London. Miss Margaret, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So tell us, how common is this practice in the UK, and why is it practiced in Western countries where there are better protection for girls to protect them from sexual violence, which breast ironing is supposed to be deterring from?
Well, I'm from Cameroon, and we are the people who coined out the name breast ironing. I was working in an organization for sexual and reproductive health for young girls. And that's when we realized that young girls, a lot of young girls in Cameroon were suffering from breast ironing. When I moved into the UK, I realized that when we move with our cultures.
Wow, she said we moved with our culture.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Yes. When we move with our culture. And since I'm part of that culture and I've experienced breast ironing, I knew that it was happening. There are certain people who say, okay, where is it happening? These are things that happens in the secrecy of homes. You know that it's happening. You're not going to see, but you know that it's happening. For example, FGM, female genital mutilation, we know that it's happening, but you are not going to see a girl being cut. You're not going to see a girl being cut.
Right. I want to bring that
right here.
Right.
Years back, there were girls who were. There was a policeman arrested a girl here who was a woman who was doing breast ironing to the girl, and that woman was from Cameroon. And because the woman argued that it was their culture, they let go of that woman. And it also happened. There was a Nigerian woman also who did it here. There are many cases, but what is happening is they feel that is the people's culture. They don't want to step in people's culture.
But you know what? Before we continue the conversation, and I'm so glad that there are people who are coming out and saying something about it. Before we continue our conversation, let's listen to women from the continent on how they feel about the breast ironing situation. Our reporter Edwin Moki Kinzeka talked to women in the Cameroon capital of Yaoundé, and we have Nancy Ndi, who is a trader, and Mary Efuji, a student at the University of Yaoundé, Kandi Honorine, an ICT student, and Elise Lawong, an office receptionist in our Your Voice segment, and we'll be right back, okay?
Psychologically, you see that young persons, they feel maybe depressed, they have low self-esteem, and they feel like they cannot really carry about themselves like other young ladies who do, those who have gone through this breast ironing. So to me, there's really nothing positive about breast ironing. That will make you always feel shy, you be on your own, you want to stay on your own corner, which is very terrible to the growth and the development of the community.
When a young girl starts developing breasts, people think that it is a means of calling men towards the child. So ironing the breast for them, they think it's a way of maybe preventing the child to grow properly before having the breast to be out. I know of some people who did breast ironing and their breasts went bigger than what they were expecting. And it also can turn to make the child to be shy. I don't know, you find yourself pulling yourself from the society because of some psychological trauma. Maybe they told you breast was not like something good that a girl could carry about. That is why we see some people carry pullovers, big heavy pullovers, to always want to hide their chest.
When you iron a lady's breast, it helps to reduce gender attraction, it helps to reduce sexual attraction, and it helps to curb any form of sexuality that may arouse in a woman. And this, to me, it has several negative effects on the lady. It affects their self-confidence, it affects reproduction, and it also causes hormonal imbalances. Because when a lady is attaining puberty and she's beginning to develop breasts and they are being ironed to reduce the growth, they become hormonal derailed. And with this, it could affect reproduction, it could affect child conception in the long run in future, and may even affect their mental health. So we say no to breast ironing. Breast ironing is not good, and it should be curtailed in all forms of in all its practices and in all its ventures.
Yeah, I remember breast ironing when my aunt first came to me, to my mom, and told her that my puberty, which is my breast, was already showing up and this was going to attract men. And I think breast ironing is because they say they protect us. They use the word protection to protect us against sexual harassment or against men coming towards us. I don't think that was protection. That was a hard process because what they do, I didn't accept them using that on me, but I saw and I've had women that tell the story about breast ironing and the pain they go through. They use wooden stone, hot stone. They use objects that could very much affect our skin, not only our health, but our skin.
Yeah, it's very sad. Well, Margaret, let me go back to you. You did say something about when we move from the continent, we bring our cultures with us. I heard Leina tell us very clearly that she believes that the men are innocent in some part because they're oblivious to the practice. In the UK, there are a lot of laws that women can use to protect their girls if there's sexual crimes against them. Why aren't the women stopping this the same way I had asked her? Why aren't women being the one to protect their girls by stopping this very harmful practice?
In 2016, we took our campaign to the House of Commons, to the Parliament here. And at that time, the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for the Home Department said this: I want to make it absolutely clear that breast ironing is not just an abhorrent practice. It is illegal, it is child abuse, and no political or cultural sensitivity should ever be used as an excuse for us to stop tackling it in the UK. So in the UK, the government is already involved. We have about 33 boroughs, council areas. And in this council area, they have the safeguarding board. This safeguarding board, they have a component of protecting children. Mm-hmm. And this component also involves genital mutilation and breast ironing. So it says that every harm that is done to a little girl, whether it's in the secrecy of home, is against the law here.
So, Margaret, I have another question for you, and I think it's in the same dynamics. I would like to understand better how mothers and grandmothers who are living in a different country, in a different culture, if they were living in their own villages and had never had any contact with anyone, that would be understandable. But these women are exposed to different ways of living, so they can really understand that what they are doing to their daughter won't help them, I don't know, fit in, live naturally and normally. So how come, why, or how do they justify that? How do they justify to the perpetuating of that tradition?
As I said, this is a practice embedded in people's culture. It's difficult to get rid of your culture. Many women see it as part of protecting their young girls. Many women, years before, I developed breasts at the age of 15, but these days you see girls at the age of 9, 10, they're already developing breasts. And women are afraid, my child is getting already sexually matured. What else can I do to protect my child? And yeah, women will still do it.
We are running out of time. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all the good work you do in the UK to help young practice, to protect them against this harmful practice. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before we close, let me ask a quick question. How does your organization help protect girls in Cameroon and elsewhere?
So the strategy we use is campaigns, both online and especially in-person campaigns. We go to churches, we go to markets, we go to hair salons, to cultural women groups, wherever women gather. We get survivors to share their stories. So first we unlock the voices of survivors through intimate storytelling. We get them bold, and then we take them along with health workers into these communities to share their stories. I shared a video with you guys. Like you would see that when survivors start sharing their story, it helps the other women who have been perpetrators or victims to speak out. And that alone is breaking the silence. That alone is helping the government, it's helping the media, it's helping the entire community know that this practice is going on and it's a harm to the bodies of young girls. And I just want to end up in saying, we are growing now to know that, like you said it very powerfully, and that's where our work is going. We're not only fighting breast ironing, we are fighting for girls to get bodily autonomy, where breast ironing is happening in the mind, where a teenage girl is working and hiding herself.
Thank you so much for that work. And this is where we end our show. We thank our guest, Yvonne Leina, founder of Women Relief Services in Cameroon, and Margaret Nyuydzewira, founder of Came Women and Girls Development Organization in the UK, for joining us. Be sure to watch our voices on the VOA website at voaafrica.com or on our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on the latest episodes and the world's top news stories.